This is what it takes to reach every tier of Hunter in Identity V. Before we start, a few clarifications. This video will cover the skill, knowledge, and game sense you're going to need to have a decent 60 to 70% win rate in each Hunter tier. If you already have a higher win rate, say 80 and 90%, then all you need to do is to play more to rank up. If your win rate is lower, say 40 to 50%, then your actual skill level is lower than the tier you're in, and you might have been match spamming. With that said, let's get into the video. Tarantula. You've just downloaded a game, or you're a survivor main who's brand new to Hunter ranking. Regardless, you're learning the very basics. The ear symbol on the top left means there's a survivor nearby. Cypher machines shake when they're being decoded. You're learning the difference between a basic and a charged attack, and what each of your abilities do. Most matches you get in Tarantula are going to be AI bot matches. Think of it like training wheels. Losing won't make you lose stars, and winning is just about knowing surface level mechanics. As long as you can follow a survivor's trails and hit them, you'll probably win most of your Tarantula matches. Cobra. At this point, you're probably experimenting with a few different hunters. Most players in this tier will design a main an easier hunter, like Disciple, Geisha, or Nightmare. You should have a decent idea of how to use your hunter's abilities, as well as what each survivor's main ability is. Coordinator has a gun that can shoot you, Magician has 3 wands that makes him go invisible, Little Girl has pages that push you backwards. Personas and builds aren't something you need to be concerned with yet. Just use the one the game gives you and you should do fine. Being a hunter in low tier is more about how well you can use your hunter's ability, whether or not your cats or mirrors or butterflies are accurate. You're also getting a little more used to the map layout. The one big issue you tend to have around Cobra tier is trying to find a survivor to chase at the start of a game. From my experience, turning up your screen's brightness helps a lot, and the more you play, the more you'll get used to where survivors spawn. Crocodile. By this point, you should have a main, a hunter you're familiar with, and play in most of your rank matches. Having a singular main is much more efficient for ranking up in comparison to playing a bunch of different hunters because there will be less to learn. You're also practicing your muscle memory. Even without looking at your screen, you should be able to press each button. The obvious ones like your basic attack and each of your abilities, but also the button for chairing, which only shows up when you get close to the chair, and picking up a survivor, which only pops up when you finish attack recovery animation. If your muscle memory remembers these button locations, you can save 1 to 2 seconds every time you chair or pick up, and besides instinct, you're also slowly building up your knowledge of each survivor you go up against. Survivor abilities, cooldowns, passives, and how many items they each have will all be slowly memorized around this tier. You're beginning to look at ciphers to keep track of survivor locations. When a survivor is decoding a cipher machine, it will shake, which you can see if you stand still, and you're starting to practice looking at them while you chair and pick up survivors. Sabertooth Tiger. You finally progressed out of the mindset of me see survivor, so me chase survivor. You're beginning to put more thought into each match. At this point, you probably have enough experience in your main hunter to warrant a B or maybe even A badge. You've nearly mastered your hunter's hitbox, attack speed, and have a good understanding of your hunter's playstyle. If you play a reaction speed or timing based hunter like Clown or Galatea, you've also learned the necessary skill set for that. You're beginning to recognize which areas your hunter is good or bad in. You have the basics down when it comes to basement camping and drop down hits, and you know the difference between good rocket chairs and bad rocket chairs. For example, the chair corner house on Ever Sleeping Town is a good chair to chair on, while the chair right next to the hospital on Sacred Hospital is quite bad. You're also starting to be able to predict how a survivor will play a pal and mind game. If they've tried to pal stun you every time, you'll notice their pattern and play your pal and mind game to counter that. Overall, Sabertooth Tiger is the first tier that you actually have to think while playing if you want to win. Manticore. By this tier, you likely have an A badge if you've been consistently playing one hunter. Around this tier, you're introduced to the concept of spawn selection. Most survivors will spawn the same places every game. The more you play, the more you memorize spawn patterns. Speaking of maps, you should intuitively know at this point the layout of each map, where buildings, windows, and pallets are. If I were to ask you to tell me the pallets in Chinatown's hotel, you should be able to tell me there's one pallet downstairs and one pallet upstairs by the fin stairs. You should also have all the dungeon locations on each map memorized. You're beginning to master a trait you use, Blink or Warp or Patroller, or sometimes Excitement, and if you play a hunter that can red light, which most hunters can, you're also learning how to play red light mind games. You're starting to have a good idea of how to counter each survivor as your main hunter. For example, if you play Gamekeeper and you're going against an aeroplanist, you should already know to be wary of his jetpacks when you use your hook. At this level, if you play a hunter that's weak to harass, you're also learning what situations to bring excitement instead of blink or warp. Cyclops. Around Cyclops is when you've learned 99% of the basic, raw knowledge of Identity V, the information you can look up on the wiki and memorize. You should know every intricacy of every map, which areas are strong, which areas are weak, which areas you can red light trick, and which areas you just have to walk straight and chase. You should also know all the survivors' abilities, passives, cooldowns, and interactions between each survivor and your hunter main. For example, if you play Feaster, you should know that Explorer can be found by your tentacles. Depending on how far along it is in the season, this is the point you might hit your first S badge or a high A badge if you play a popular hunter. By this point, your game sense becomes equally as valuable as how good your chase is. If you down someone in 40 seconds, but then just sit on the chair for a whole minute while the survivors sell, you'll probably get a tie even though your chase was fast. You're building your intuition and thought process on when to pressure ciphers, when to bleed survivors, and when and what to trump card into, and so much more. Your movement is also much smoother, and you now almost never get caught in obstacles. Evo Dragon. If you've been playing only one hunter since you were low tier, you probably have an S badge by now. You're easily able to memorize survivor spawns and take advantage of that information later in the game. You're familiar with both the survivor and hunter persona trees. If the survivor gets a speed boost when they first see you, they're probably flywheel. And if you get a window speed boost, it's knee-jerk reflex. You're able to read and memorize persona information mid-game and keep track for the endgame, who has borrowed time and who doesn't. You're also familiar with your own hunter persona tree. If you're going against multiple stunners, Prospector, and Chantress, you know to bring anti-stun traits like Addiction. Your hitbox manipulation is improving, you're getting better hitting through body blocks and generous Orpheus. You're now able to see a cipher's shaking even when you're moving, and can predict or find hiding survivors via intuition and mental denies triangulation. Based on how much time has passed, you're able to estimate approximate cipher percentages and whether or not the cipher is primed. Since survivors get 3 bans now, you're probably going to be interested in picking up a secondary hunter in case your main gets banned. Hydra. You're finally at the peak of Identity V, well, according to the game's tier system at least. You likely have a top 5 S badge in your main, and probably an A or B badge in your secondary hunter if you have one. You have extensive knowledge about how to play your main hunter, for example, lizard jump spots, clown 180 turns, geisha butterfly tricks. Your movement is excellent, and you rarely waste any time making suboptimal movements. There's no one-size-fits-all plan for improving in Hydra, but the best way to keep getting better is reviewing your matches with other peak tier players and continuing to practice the basics. Well, that's it. I'd just like to ask you to subscribe to my channel. My high school graduation project is due in 2 months, and I made it a goal to get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I appreciate any and all support.